this is DocuShare Flex. This is the interface for DocuShare Flex. And I want you to notice a couple of things. So first of all, the user interface is quite a bit different than what you'd see in DocuShare. So if we take a look at what we see here, it's a very mobile, mobile-like application. You've got this panel on the left. This is your navigation panel. And the panel allows you to choose which area you want to work on. And for the most part, you're going to be dealing with either files, tasks, or search. This panel is collapsible. So if you click on this button up here, it will collapse to give you a little extra real estate. To actually navigate around the system is extremely straightforward. If you want to go into a folder, you click on the folder, and it'll take you into that particular folder. Within any folder, we could have subfolders, we could have documents, and we also organize those documents based on their type. So you can see here that the folders are categorized under folders, documents are categorized under documents, invoices or any other custom objects that you have would appear under their own category. And these can, of course, be collapsed or expanded. This user interface is pliable. It's malleable. We can change it based on our requirements. So, for example, right now I'm in this folder called Contracts. And right now what I'm seeing are the titles of the document as well as this little icon on the right, which allows me to view the settings of the document. If I click on this little I, it allows me to configure the user interface to look the way I want it to work. So, for example, if I wanted to add the expiration date or any other property so that it appears on the user interface, I add it, I click Save, and now I've adjusted the user interface. And now you can see here I've got a category. I don't have any actual expiration date set up for this account, for these documents, but you can see I've added a column. So I can manipulate the way in which the user interface looks simply by going to a dialog. If I want to set it back, I simply hit Restore Defaults. It's going to restore the defaults, and now that expiration is gone. Everything that we have, every object that we have within DocuShare Flex has its own unique URL. So right now I'm in this folder called Contracts, and if you look at the very top here, you can see that it's folder number 595. If I go into a different folder, you can see that it's folder number 829, and we can use this to our advantage. So if this is a folder I'm using often, I can simply click and drag and drop, and now I've got a button here called Subrights Folder, which would take me to this folder. So I'm going to go outside of the system, outside of that particular folder. I'm going to go now and click on that button, and regardless of where I am, it takes me into that folder. We've got a variety of other tools for helping you navigate around the system. Let me go ahead and expand this menu again so you can see it. One of the options here you'll notice is called Bookmarks. So Bookmarks is a way to tag favorites of yours. So again, if there's certain areas you're working on often, whether they're documents, whether they're folders, you can gain access to them quickly. So for example, let's say the security document or folder is one that I wanted to add to my bookmarks. I click on it, I choose Bookmark, and I'll get a little dialog box that appears here that says you've successfully added bookmarks. So now wherever I am in the system, if I click on this Bookmarks tab, it takes me to my favorites. So here I've just added that security, and my security folder is there. I hope that makes sense. Okay, terrific. Let's move on a bit. We're going to now talk about adding documents to our system. And there's a multitude of ways in which we can get our content into DocuShare Flex. The first of all is scanning. Remember I said during the slide deck, the way in which we can scan content into DocuShare Flex is by using Connect Key enabled devices. So if we have a Connect Key enabled device, we can click on this, I'll choose this Connect Key interface. This is what Connect Key looks like. This is what it looks like at your device. Someone would walk up to the device. We can program buttons for different workflows. So if I wanted to add an invoice, I wanted to add a contract, based on the button I would see at the device, I'd walk up to the device, I'd click the button. I can even populate metadata information right at the device. I go ahead and click Scan, and this document will end up in the right location in DocuShare Flex. Another way in which I can add content into DocuShare Flex is simply by clicking and dragging. So I've got this folder here called Incoming Documents, and you can see that there are no documents in this folder. What I'm going to do is minimize my screen, and I want to show you my desktop. And on my desktop, you can see that I've got a variety of different files here, and each one of these files is a different type. I've got a slide deck, I've got a TIFF image, a PDF, an email, a Word document, an Excel document, and a JPEG image. I'm going to select all of these documents at the same time. I'm going to click, I'm going to drag, I'm going to release, and they will all get uploaded into DocuShare Flex. DocuShare Flex is content agnostic. It does not care what types of documents it is. It'll automatically upload it. You can see I got a message here. Some documents fail to upload. There might be documents on the site, including in the trash, with the same titles. So one of the preventative mechanisms to avoid duplicates is the system will look to say, hey, you've already got this document in the system. Make sure that you either rename it or have a different document so we don't have duplicates in the system. So now I've uploaded this document or these documents, and I have access to them. Now, if I want to view them or download them, I simply would click on them, and I can view or download them. So that's another way we can add content. We can simply click and drag, add content, and it'll come to the system. We can scan documents in. We can also manually add documents. When I click the Add button here, I want you to notice a couple of things. I've got the option to do Folder, and I've got Document. When I choose Document, it brings open a dialog box where I can browse for a file, and I can also add metadata information. Metadata is also called indexing information or index fields. So I chose a generic document, and when you first install DocuShare Flex, all you would see in this dialog box are folder or document. You'll notice here I have some other ones, contract, HR, invoices. These are all configurable. So we can create our own custom objects based on the type of documents we want to bring into the system. And why would we bother doing that? Well, for example, let's choose invoice. If I bring in an invoice, I can choose a file, but I can also specify indexing information related to the type of information I want to capture about an invoice. In this case, the invoice number, the PO amount, the invoice amount, the status. And what I can do when I have this information captured is I can conduct searches on the content. I can automate the content. I can say, okay, if an invoice comes in and it's over $500 because I've looked into this invoice amount field, I can automatically trigger a workflow based on the amount of the invoice. So those are some of the reasons why you might want to capture, your customers might want to capture custom objects and or create custom metadata. All right, let's talk about some of the new features that we have different from DocuShare. One of the biggest add-ons we have is the document viewer. And so this is how the document viewer works. Beside every document, regardless of the type of file it is, you'll notice that there's this little rectangle with a magnifying glass in it. And what that does is it opens the document viewer. And so when I click on the document viewer, it's a viewer where I can see the document, but there's also now gives me a variety of different capabilities. So let's walk through these capabilities one by one. The first thing that this viewer allows me to do is search within the document and find out where the search terms are in that document. So if I, for example, do a search on the word health, it looks through the entire document, and not only does it highlight where it found it, but it gives me the ability to jump directly to that page. So it finds it in the document, and it allows me to jump to a particular page in the document. This is something that's simply not available in DocuShare. In DocuShare, you can do a global search for a word, but because we have this viewer now, once we're in a document, we can search for specific content in that document and also navigate directly to that spot in the document. You can also put in a variety of search terms as well. The next thing we can do, with this viewer is it now gives us the ability to annotate our documents. So I've got an annotation tool at the top here. So annotation, if you're not familiar with that word, it basically means you can draw on your documents. So I've got a variety of different drawing tools, including shapes, freehand. I can add text to this document. I can add arrows. I can do things like highlight the document. So if I wanted to highlight a certain part of this document, I simply drag across it, and it highlights the document. I can do things like strikeouts on the document. There's something important to note here. Everything that I'm doing on this document up to this point is not actually affecting the document. So even though I've stricken it, even though I've added a highlighter to it, it's not actually affecting the document. It's basically doing this on a layer on top of the document. After I've made my annotations to the document, and there's a variety of other ones, we can create hyperlinks, there's a stamp that allows us to stamp some images, predefined images onto the document. There's also an image one where we can put predefined images onto the document. So there's a variety of these annotation tools. Well, after I've done my annotations, notice in the top right corner here, I've got this Save button. So what it's done is you can see annotations successfully saved as Eric G. I'm logged in to the system as Eric G, and I've now saved the annotations for this particular document. What I want to show you is I'm now going to take this particular URL, and we're going to navigate as a different user. So now I've logged into the system as a different user. I'm just going to show you the document itself. But if I go to annotations, you can see here that I'm logged in as someone named Chuck. But now I can see, notice how this is the page that we were annotating on. It looks blank, so we didn't actually affect the page itself. But if I choose Eric G, I can see now all of the annotations that Eric made. If I go ahead as this other user, I can now add content or annotations to this document. I can save my annotations as well. You can see here annotations successfully saved as C. Searcy. I'm signed in as Chuck Searcy. And now I can look between my annotations, I can see Eric's annotations, and I can turn off my annotations as well. Now, the beauty of this is that if you are collaborating on a document, you could have multiple people making changes to the document or annotating the document without actually changing it. And what's nice is after you're done, you can actually save this document as whoever's on the, bear with me a second, we're on a conference call that I thought I'd muted all the lines. Bear with me, I'll go ahead and try to mute them. Everyone should be muted. Okay, everyone should be muted now, so we'll continue on. So after I have my annotations made, I can do what's called a burn-in. So what this will do is take all of the annotations that I've selected to burn in. I didn't show you this, but when I'm actually creating an annotation, notice that I have this option where I can select whether or not the object gets burnt in or not as when I go ahead and burn in the object. So I have this option here called burn in. What this will do is now take all the annotations. I can choose which I want burned into the document. I go ahead and hit burn in, and what this does now is takes all of those annotations and makes them part of the document. And so, here, bear with me a second. Thanks for letting me know. Someone said that we're no longer sharing. I'm assuming now you can see my desktop. If someone can just let me know, that would be great via the chat. Great, terrific. So what I had shown there was a burn-in. I click the burn-in button, and what it does is it makes a new version of this document with all of these annotations now burned in. We also have the capability to redact content. So redaction, if you're not familiar with that term, redaction allows you to block out areas of text so that they cannot be seen. So I can redact areas of the document, and just like I did with my annotations, I can save them or I can burn them in. And now if I burn this into the document, it's now saved a new version of this document with the burn-in. So now people who access this document can no longer see that content. So that viewer is brand new. It's available only in DocuShare Flex. It allows you to search within the content. It allows you to annotate the content of your document. It allows you to collaborate on a document through annotations. It also allows you to redact information from your content. Okay, let's continue on. I want to show you a few other things related to DocuShare Flex that are not available in DocuShare. So if I go to this contracts folder, or actually we'll go to my accounting folder, and in my accounting folder you see a document here called invoice. And this is just an invoice, but I'm going to go to the properties of this invoice. One of the new features that we have as part of the properties of a document is called related documents. So often in a content management system, you'll want two documents that are tied together, and an invoice is a perfect example. You've got an invoice. If you also have in the system the check that was paid to it, you may want to tie those two together. So now I'm in the settings of this invoice document. Under related documents, I've got this check. So if I click on this check, I can now see the check that was used to pay that particular invoice. So it gives us a way to tie two documents together. That's called related documents and part of the settings of a document. A few other things I'd like to show you with regards to content management. Once we're in a folder or document, there's a variety of things we can do with our content. If I select the document or a variety of documents, I have the ability to download them and zip them. So if you want to store them offline rather than in the cloud, you can take your selected content and create a zip archive of the content. We also have the ability to copy shortcut. So if I wanted to take this content and share it with someone, I could hit copy shortcut. I could create a new mail message, and once I have the new mail message created, I can simply paste the link, and now the person who gets the link, assuming that they have the right permission, will have access to that content. And we'll talk a little bit about security and permissions in a bit. All right, let's talk a little bit now about workflow. You'll notice on the left-hand side of the screen, I've got the Files tab that we've spent a lot of time in. I've also got this area called My Tasks. So as I mentioned, DocuShare Flex can also be used for routing and for workflows. And here's how it looks like from a user perspective. I've got a variety of tasks that have been assigned to me. And in this case, I've got an invoice approval. And here's where I would go to see all of my tasks. I've got the My Tasks area of DocuShare, and it's segmented in different types of tasks that I have assigned to me. If I want to see every kind of assignment, I go to All, and that's the default. But if I want to just see my approvals or rejections, I find them here. I can find my review-only tasks here and my general tasks. To actually look at these, I click on the invoice itself, and this gives us an interface very much like the interface we just saw with the viewer. So within this interface, while we're in a workflow, we can do those same searches. We can do those same annotations. We can do those same redactions, but we can do them now as part of a workflow. This also gives us the capability to classify our documents. So we can see here on the left, we have all of the metadata associated with this document, but it can also be used as an onboarding capability. So we can bring in all this document, and I can now classify this document directly from this workflow. Notice here where I've got this option that you haven't seen before. It's called Change Type. So if this came in, remember I talked about, a generic document versus an invoice versus a contract. This came in as a generic document, but I want to tag it as an invoice. And right now it's a generic document. I can choose Change Type, and then I can select what type of document it is. Oh, this is an invoice. And when I choose invoice, it's going to give me the metadata fields associated with invoice, and now I can populate those invoice properties. Through this interface, I can also approve or reject anything assigned to me. What's also nice is I can see who else is in this workflow. And this particular workflow is just me. DocuShare Flex allows you to create single-level workflows or single-step workflows. But in that single step, and I'll show you this in a moment, you can send it to a variety of people and have a variety of people have to approve it before the task is complete. So rather than actually hitting approve or reject, I'm going to close this and we're going to go back to my tasks. I'm going to show you another neat little feature. Let's say I'm a manager and I've got a lot of tasks to approve. Rather than actually having to go in individually to each task, I can simply select all the tasks that I want to approve or reject, select the action, choose approve, and all in one sweep, I've approved everything in my queue. So that's what a routing slip looks like from an end user perspective who's participating in a workflow. Let me show you quickly how you create them. They're fairly straightforward. I create something called a routing template. And the routing template, I choose Add Routing Template, and I give it a title. Let's call this Vacation Request. I can give it a summary and instructions, and then I choose what type of routing is this. Is this something that's going to be an approval, a review only, or general? And then what type of reply do I want? Is it just going to be a single user like the one I showed you, or am I sending it to a group of people? And within that group, does just one person have to approve, the majority, a certain number, or does everyone have to approve before it gets done? We can require a password. We can require justification, meaning someone actually has to put something in the justification field in order to go through the approval. Require view. Remember that step I just took where I checked them all and without even looking at them, I approved them? We can make it so that's not possible, that you actually have to look at something before you review it or approve it. And then you can prevent recipients from releasing it. So we also have this concept when we're sending it to a group of people is that it can be acquired, meaning I send it to 5 people. It's out in the world for all those 5 people. Any one of those 5 people now, depending on the type of task I've created, can acquire it, saying, okay, I'm taking this one, I'm going to approve it, and then it's going to be on me, particularly if it just requires a certain number of approvals or a majority approval. We can grab, certain users can grab the task. So in essence, you can create a queue. I'm sending this task to 10 people. I only need one person to grab it and approve it. So it's basically a workload where someone can come in, grab a task, approve it, and then go to the next step. And then in the next step, we choose who it should go to. So here we see all of our users or our groups. You assign who you want it to go to. And then in the final step, you choose what permission level does this people have who have access to this routing slip. So we have different permission groups where certain people will have access to this routing slip who want to use it. And then that's it. At the last step, you can choose an escalation. You can say, when is this due? And if the person doesn't do it within that certain period, what do you want to do? Do you want to cancel the task altogether, or do you want to email a reminder? So that's it. That's how you create a routing slip. Once you've created a routing slip, you can take any document and put it through that routing process. Let's now talk about search. What we didn't talk about, when we put a document into DocuShare Flex, a few things happen. First of all, if the document has text that's recognizable as text, every single word of every document will be indexed. So earlier when we went to those files, those incoming documents, and in those incoming documents, when we uploaded a PDF, when we uploaded an email, when we uploaded that check, as long as the text is recognizable as text within that document, every single word will get indexed. So wherever we are in the system, we have this little window where we can search the particular folder for a particular keyword. If we go to the main screen, we could search the folder and all the subfolders or the entire site. So we type in our keyword, click search. It looks through every word of every document, and it finds your search results. We also have a quick search interface. So on the left-hand side where you see search, we can not only do a global search, but we can do a search based on the types of documents. Remember earlier I was talking about capturing metadata? Well, if I choose invoice, I can now search for all the keywords related to invoices. So with a full text search, I couldn't find all the invoices that were between $500 and $1,000, but with this search, I can say, you know, show me all the invoices that are greater than $100, and that's another reason why we capture that metadata, so that we can conduct these searches for particular fields. I go ahead and run the search, and it finds all the invoices that are greater than $100. A couple of more features I want to show you before we end today's session and review for any questions. Let's talk a little bit about security and permissions. So if I go to a particular folder here, I've got a folder here called Security. And right now you can see at the top right corner, notice that I'm logged in as Eric Rebler. If I go to that Security folder, you'll notice that I have access to two documents here. Anyone can see this document, and then I've got this document here called Top Secret. I'm going to go ahead and create a split screen, and I'm going to bring open a different DocuShare window. And notice how in this DocuShare Flex window, I'm logged in. If you see in the top right corner, I'm logged in as Chuck Searcy. So on the right-hand side, I'm logged in as Eric Rebler, left-hand side, Chuck Searcy. I'm going to take this URL, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it over here. I want you to notice something. Even though Chuck and I are looking at the exact same folder, notice how I can see two documents and Chuck can only see one document. This is because we can control security right down to the document level, and the way in DocuShare Flex we create the security settings are through security groups. So we create groups of particular roles and particular types of users, and based on your role or the type of users that you have, you can set permissions on documents. So here we can see here are all the groups and users that have access to this document, and based on their role, we can choose what role they are and which types of roles have access to this particular document. The last thing I want to talk about today is automation capabilities, and we're really just going to talk about it. Within DocuShare Flex, much like we had in DocuShare, we have this notion of, or this feature called content rules. And what a content rule is, it's basically a way to automate action in DocuShare with a trigger. So basically it has two elements to it, a trigger and an action. You say that if you set up a rule that says if something happens, then I want you to take a certain action. The best analogy is like your email. You know how in your Outlook you can set up a rule that says if it has this subject line, I want you to automatically delete it. Well, that has a trigger and action. The trigger is the subject line. The action is deleting the document. But in DocuShare Flex, using content rules, you can have all sorts of triggers and all sorts of actions. So I'll just walk you through the process. It's basically just a wizard that you run through to create these content rules. So I give it a title, and then I can choose all the elements of my trigger. So when do I want this to go off? Do I want it to go if the invoice is over a certain amount, or if the title is this? And what event do I want to monitor? And remember I said there's a laundry list of different things you can use to trigger an action in DocuShare. So once an object is triggered or an action is triggered, then what? What do we want to happen? And then you can add an action. And your action can be a variety of different features. So you set up these rules on a folder, and it allows you to have things happen automatically. So some examples. We talked about invoice. An invoice comes in, it's over $500, it should go to this person. A document comes in that has resume in the title. Well, it should automatically be routed into the resume folder. So it basically allows you to automate a variety of capabilities in the system just by going through a wizard.